empty seats with candles, flowers, and incense. That's for anybody. They're not necessarily reserved for people who have yet to come. So yeah, anybody's welcome to make use of those. So just to give a bit of a heads up what's happening this evening, that we'll do the chanting and meditation as normal and take a short break after that and come back for whoever would like to determine the 8 precepts for the Wanpra evening, the Lunar Observance evening. And then there'll be a talk, and after that there'll be the announcement about Māgha Pūjā along with the circumambulation, and then we'll end with that. And we're going to do Paritta chanting this evening for a dedication to Stanley Stamp, Debbie's father, who seems to be, his life is winding up, and they're just trying to make him as comfortable as possible, so sending metta and good wishes. So let's see if invite Ajahn Kai, Nicole the Devas. So also this, it's in, anybody who wants to follow along or chant the Parittas, it's Chanting Book Volume 2, the orange chanting book. And there's an index of first lines on like page 3 or so. That's an easy way to know which chant is being done.
You lead. Mẹเอาไหมหนังสือมันฟัง
ขอการสบายใจปริตวานเมตังสเมตาปะทันตาอวิคิตจิตตาปริตังภานันตุสัพเพกาเมจรูเปคิริสิกรตเตจันตลิเควิมาเนทีเปรเทจะคาเมตรุวนาคาเนเคหวตุมหิเคเตภูมิมาจายันตุเทวาชลพลวิสเมยคัคคันทัพพนาภาติทันตาสันติเกยังมุนิวรวจนังสาทโอเมสุนันตุธรรมสวนกาโลอายัมปทันตาธรรมสวนกาโลอายัมปทันตาธรรมสวนกาโลอายัมปทันตานะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัส
มังสรณังคัจฉามิทุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกวิทูอนุตตโรปุริสธัมมสารติสัทธาเทวมนุสสานังพุทโธภควาติสวากขาโตภควตาธัมโมสันติติโกอาคาลิโกเอหิปัสสิโกโอปัญญิโกปัจจตังเมติตาโพวินยูกิติสปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอุชุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยายาปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสามีจิปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยะติทังจัตตาริปุริสยุคานิอาถาปุริสปุคละเสสะภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยอาหุเนโยตาคิเนโยอัญชลิกรณิโยอนุตตรังปุญญเกตังโลกัสสาติมัสเสวนาจะบาลานังปันติตานังจะเสวนาปูจาจะปูจนิยานังเอตัมมังกะละมุตตมังปฏิรูปเดสวาสุจะภูเบจะกตปุญญตาอาตสัมมาปณิทิตาเอตัมมังกะละมุตตมังอาหุสัจจันจะสิปัญจเวมามามาตปานาจะสัญญโมอาปมาโนจะตัมเมสุเอตัมมังกะละมุตตมังคารโวจะนิวาโตจะสันตุติจะกตัญญูตากาเลนะธัมมาสวนังเอตัมมังกะละมุตตมังคันติจะโสวจาสตาสมนานันจะดาสนังกาเลนะธัมมาสักกาจาเอตัมมังกะละมุตตมังตโพจะพระมจริยังจะอริยสัจจานัตตาสนังนิพพานสัจจกิริยาจะเอตัมมังกะละมุตตมังพุทธัสสะโลกธัมเมหิจิตตังยาสนะกัมปติยโสกังวิรจังเกมังเอตัมมังกะละมุตตมังเอตาลิสานิกัตวานะสัมปัตตมปราจิตาสัพพะทโสทิงกัจจันติตันเตสัมมังกะละมุตตมังคิธรณียมาตรุสเลนะยันตังสันตังปะดังอภิสเมจะสาโกอุจุจะสุอุจุจะสุวัจโจจะสมุตุอนัตติมานิสันตุสกโกจะสุบาโรจะอาปะกิโจจะสาลาภุกโวติสันตินทริโยจะนิพพโกจะอาปะกาโมกุเลสุอนันติโตนะจักขุดังสมาจเรกินจิเยนะวินยูมาเรอุปาวะเดโยสุขิโนวะเกมิโนโหนตุสัพเพสัตตาปวันตุสุขิตาตาเยเกจิปานะพุทธาติกัสสาวะทาวราวะอนาวเสส ธัมเมรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุยัมพุทธเสโตปริวานิสุจิงสมาดิมานันตริกัญญมาภุสมาดินาเตนะสมโนนาวิจตินัมปิธัมเมรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุเยปุกละอาตัสสตังปัสสะตาจาตาริเยตานิยุกานิหอนติเตดากิเนยสุกตาสัสสาวกะเอเตสุจินนานิมหาปลานิรัมปิสังเกรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุเยสุปยุตตังมนัสสาดาเลนะนิกามิโนโกตมัสสะสนามิเตปาติปาตาอมตังมิกายลาตามุลังนิพุติปุญจมานาอิรัมปิสังเกรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุกิยัมปุรานังนวังนาติสัมภวังวิราตจิตายติเกภวัสมิงเทกินาลิจาอวิรุลิจันตาหิพันติดิรายตายัมปริโภอิดัมปิสังเกรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุยันตุนิมิตังอวมังคลังชโยจามนาโพสักุณาสสะโลภาปากะโหตุสุวินังภกันตังพุทธังยุภาเวนะวินาสเมนตุยันตุนิมิตังอวมังคลังชโยจามนาโพสักุณาสสะโลภาปากะโหตุสุวินังภกันตังธัมมังยุภาเวนะวินาสเมนตุยันตุนิมิตังอวมังคลังชโยจามนาโพสักุณาสสะโลภาปากะโหตุสุวินังภกันตังสังฆังยุภาเวนะวินาสเมนตุทุกขปาตาชนิทุกขมยาปาตาชนิภัยโสกาปาตาชนิโสกาหนตุสาเวปิปานิโนเอตาวตาจะอัมเมหิสัมปดังปุญญสัมปดังสาเวเดวะอนุโมทันตุสาปุเรโตอะปารณิสาภาปะโตสัมโพธิพุทธมังเอเตนะสัจวะเจนะโหตุเตชยมังคลังชยันโตโพธิยามุเลสัจญานังนันติวาตโนเอวังกวังวิจโยโหอิจยาสุจยมังคะเรอปาราจิตาภาลังเกสิเสปัตตวิโภคะเรอภิเศเกสาปะพุทธานังกายาปะโตปะโมดติสุนาคาตังสุมังคลังสุภาภาตังสุบุติตังสุกัญโญสุมวุตโตจัสสุยิตังบรหมจารีสุปดากิหังกายกรรมังวาจากรรมังปดากินังปดากินังมโนกรรมังปณิกิเตปดากินังปดากินานิกัตวานะละปันตาเตปดากิเน
Because this is Māgha Pūjā, we'll also chant the Ovada Paṭimokkha. It's in Chanting Book Volume 1, the Brown Chanting Book, page 81. This is the Ovada Paṭimokkha version 2. There's 2 translations, and we'll be chanting version 2 on page 81. As we begin our meditation, one way to make the mind happy in meditation, make the mind glad, this is anapanasati, the gladdening of the mind, is just to recollect how much we've had to endure in our life and that we're still here, we haven't given up yet, how much work we've done to look after the monastery, looking after the temple, the shrine room, all of the service we've given, all of the offerings we've given, all of the generosity we've done. This is not a small thing. And also all of the difficulties that we've overcome in just anything we may have experienced in our lives as Dhamma practitioners. And just to recollect that all of that we're still here and all of that has led to us just being able to develop on the path, develop in the practice. It's not a small thing. we'll take a short break and then come back for the optional 8 precepts and the talk.
สินแปดสินแปดเอาสินห้าเอาสินแปดอันนี้ไม่มี
Salt lip.
อ๋อคนละเล่ม
He has food.
มีหน้าทำไมถึงได้บอกว่าไม่มีหน้า80
ได้ข้อเดียวสิน
หน้า
Yeah, sound
138 131
Voice sounded.
ร้อย
131
สามค่ะคุณค่ะ
สินแปดสินแปดห้ามร้องเพลงห้ามร้องเพลง
เต็ม
everyone is willing, you can begin with 4 bows.
Dream. Grab. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. 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 Bhutang saranang gacchami. Bhutang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Bhutang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Bhutang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Ti sarana kamanang nititang. Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adina dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Adina dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Abrahmacharya veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Abrahmacharya I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity. Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura meraya maja pamadatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times. Nacha gita varita visukadasana malaganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Nacha gita varita visukadasana malaganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment. I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment. Uchasayana mahasayana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Uchasayana mahasayana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place. Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikapadani silena sugatin yanti silena boga sampada silena nibutin yanti tasama silang visodaye. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Sabba papa sa akaranang kusala supasampada sachitta pariyo dapanang etang buddhana sasanang ti. That's February 12th, 2025. The Māgha Pūjā is the evening that the full moon of February, or the full moon of Māgha, and not too long after the Buddha's awakening, after his enlightenment, that he gave this teaching to 1,250 arhants. So it's a very unusual, very interesting teaching that, well, the teaching itself is not unusual. It's very basic and practical, but it's unusual that he gave it to arhants. We thought maybe arhants, they're fully enlightened already. They finished their practice. They're fully liberated. They don't need to hear any teachings. It's the Buddha actually laying out the fundamentals of the holy life and just distilling it into just these basic principles of sabba papasa akaranang. That's the refraining from evil, refraining from the unwholesome. And then kusala supasampada, that's the lifting up of the good, or the cultivation of what is good. Sachitta pariyodapanang, the purification of one's mind, or the cleansing of one's mind. Etang buddha nasasanang, that's all the Buddhas teach this. And this is, you could also, another alternate translation is, this is all the Buddhas teach. This is what they teach. And it can be distilled or compressed or just summarized in that way, that these very basic principles. And then the teaching goes on that kanti paramang tapotitika, this one phrase, I would say, encapsulates most of the teachings in the Thai forest tradition of Buddhism, and that the Kruba Ajahns emphasize that one phrase, perhaps even, maybe not more, but it's really, really highly emphasized in the teachings. I'm not sure whether they emphasize that one more or the following of the training standards, the Vinaya. But these two, they do reinforce each other. So that's the kanti paramang tapotitika, kanti parami. And this is the patient endurance. In Thai we say otton. So that this is the thing that helps us to overcome the defilements, the thing that burns up the defilements or gets rid of the defilements, just that sense of patient endurance. And patient endurance, that's how we translate it in English. It's perhaps not the best translation, because otton, or just the word kanti in Pali, it's more like the ability to bear with things without giving rise to anger and aversion. Things when things don't go our way. For example, when adverse situations happen, we get sick, or we get hurt, or we get injured, or we experience something like loss. We experience loss of money, loss of loved ones, loss of status, loss of reputation. When we experience those things, then that quality of otton, or that quality of kanti, is what is needed. It's that ability to bear with the unpleasant, in a way that we can be with it. We can be mindful we can develop a sense of being okay with things when there's adverse conditions. It's an important quality in the practice. Of course, the ultimate level of this comes up in the sutta on the simile of the saw, where when the Buddha actually perfected his Kanti parami, the perfection of patience, the perfection of Kanti, was in a past life where he actually had all of his limbs savagely sawn off with these hand saws, and then claimed that even then he still didn't give rise to any thoughts of anger. That was his perfection of patience, even in one of the most extreme circumstances you could imagine, still not giving rise to anger. And that was a quality that was necessary for him to develop in order to attain Buddhahood eventually. For us, we don't have to go to that extent, but it's a good reflection. We don't have to experience things like torture and extreme misfortune in order to develop patient endurance. Although almost every human being within the course of their life will experience torture at some point. If it's not some sort of physical torture, then we might experience mental torture where things don't go our way, and it's just everything just seems to cave in. Our whole life can fall apart just like that. Things can seem to be going well, and then everything just falls apart. Things don't go our way. And that can be torture. That's mental torture. That's mental hell. So that's in the mind and the heart. The mind and the heart can be in hell. Even if our body is physically healthy and okay, then there's various ways that we make ourselves suffer and even torture ourselves. Or we might experience some sort of trauma, a breakup of a relationship, or just if we have children, they might not act in a way that we expect or would like them to act. So this can be torture for us. So that quality of Kanti, again, if we just very simplify it into not giving rise to aversion or not giving rise to anger, or if the mind does give rise to anger, then being able to find ways to dispel it quickly. This is what Kanti is. This is what we talk about with Oton in the Thai sense of the word. So just that one phrase, the Kanti paramang tapo titika, tapa or tapo, that's the fire, the spiritual fire. Normally when the Buddha talked about tapas, he talked about wanting to put out the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. But in this sense, when he's talking about Kanti, he's actually developing a spiritual fire that burns up the defilements. So this is the type of fire we do want to be cultivating. And so many things can happen in our lives, that so many difficulties, so much pain, so much suffering. And I remember talking with a group of people a while back, and some people bringing up this sense of, having experienced trauma in their life. And the more people I meet or the more people I talk to, the more I think that actually trauma is quite normal. Almost everybody's experienced some trauma in their lives, even to the point where I thought maybe you could even translate dukkha as trauma, that we're experiencing either lesser or greater trauma on a daily basis. So they even have this word in Thai. They say trauma. This word, like I was trauma, Ajahn. It's like I got trauma. So even in Thai, they have this word, and they even take they've taken words like guilty, I feel guilty. But maybe in English it's not quite the same as the Thai people have taken it on. But still, it's something normal. So we consider trauma as actually something normal. And that quality of patient endurance is going to help us to overcome all types of suffering, all types of trauma. And when we cultivate the quality of Khanti, one sign that we've cultivated it is that the mind is very cool and peaceful. And it's a sense of coolness and peace which is very, very refreshing. And it's not like strong ecstasy or bliss, but it's extremely delightful and really, really just, there's a sense of mental comfort when we're able to have patient endurance. It's even like the Chinese saying, like, the patient person is always happy. So whatever situation we're in, if we're able to, and patient endurance comes together with mindfulness as well. So when we're able to be fully present for anything that's happening, even if it's not nice, even if it's something unpleasant, there can be a sense of refreshment, and the heart is cool, and there's a sense of no worries, and things are okay enough. And I think I really got this feeling when I first read Luang Por Cha's teachings, when I first developed faith in the practice and in the Buddha's teaching. It was through reading Luang Por Cha's teachings. And there was a certain feeling I got when I read Luang Por Cha's teachings that I didn't get from reading any other teachings. So I had read teachings of some Hindu teachings, I'd read some Christian teachings, some spiritual teachers, different spiritual teachers, having read their teachings. And I thought they were quite good. But when I read Luang Por Cha, there was something different about it. And it's very hard to put into words what that was. Now I think of it as the Aryan energy. It was like contacting something that was fundamentally different from all the other teachings. And on the surface, Luang Por Cha's teachings look similar to other spiritual teachings. But then as I read Luang Por Cha and started to get a feeling for Luang Por Cha, there was something different. And the difference was when I started to contemplate Luang Por Cha's teachings and get a feel for his teachings, there was this coolness in the heart. Everything was very cool. There was a sense of there's no need to worry. Everything's okay in the moment. And we can endure. No matter how difficult things get, we can endure. No matter how bad the mental defilements get, we can endure. One of the things that struck me about Luang Por Cha's teachings was that he was very humble about his own path of practice, and he was very honest and open about his mistakes that he made. And they're the same mistakes that we're all going to make in the course of the practice. And some of us have made those mistakes, and some of us, if we're just starting out, there's going to be inevitable failures and mistakes. And so Ajahn Chah had defilements in his mind, just like the rest of us. And he had great anger that he had to work with and overcome. And he had great greed and just other defilements that he had to overcome. This came through just, in the end, it was endurance. It wasn't really applying any other practice other than just enduring. And when Luang Por Cha was asked later in his life what were the qualities that caused him to succeed in his practice, he said there was two. One was Otton, Kwam Otton, the patient endurance, Khanti Parami. And the other quality was the Picharana Anichang, the contemplation of impermanence, or the contemplation of uncertainty. So those two things. And those really go together as well. And any of us who have endured difficulties and been able to overcome our own aversion to situations that we don't like, and if we've experienced even a little bit of that coolness of heart, that gives rise to a quality that we call saddha. So that's faith, confidence. In Thai they say, Kwam Luam Sai, give like a sense of confidence or steadiness when we reflect on these things, and we experience that coolness of heart, and we think there's something here. I'm going to make a lot of that, make much of that. So that gives us a glimpse into the Aryan energy, the feeling of what it's like to be in the presence of the noble ones, the feeling of what it's like to be in the presence of these great teachers, these ajahns. So Luangpur Cha. And another thing that's just totally amazing to me is, we have the Buddha who lived almost 2,600 years ago. So that's a long time. But then over time, there's been students of his and then who have actually cultivated and realized the teachings and done these very same practices. They all had to endure in just the same way that we will have to. And then down to these great masters that we hear about, Thanajan Mun and Thanajan Cha and so on. We hear about these masters, and they've passed away as well, and they had to go through the same things that we're all going through and having to go through. They all went through those same things. Luangpu Mun, Thanajan Mun had to endure great hardships, great difficulties through the course of his practice. And it was through those difficulties that he actually realized the Dhamma and became the master that he was, and was able to teach his own great disciples and great students. And it's through the difficulties that Thanajan Cha endured that he actually was able to become the great master that he was, the great Krupa Ajahn that he was. If these greats of the past were just able to take it easy, I don't think it would have been the same. Their biographies would not have been as inspiring, and they wouldn't have been able to develop patient endurance. So we can take this a step further then and say that actually when there's difficulties, that's good. That's a good thing. It's good in terms of the practice. If it's too easy, it's not good. So we have very nice facilities here at Abhayagiri, and things are more comfortable now. You could say that things are more comfortable now than they were when the monastery first started. So when the monastery first started, there was just a little house and the garage, which became the Dhamma hall, which is now the dining hall. And there was one toilet for the community. So that had to be shared. So people had to endure those basic unpleasant feelings, just waiting for the bathroom to become available. So, and that's good. That's good. That can have a brightening quality, that sense of having to endure and just having to be patient, and just with these basic things, these basic bodily functions. That's something that can help our practice. And the kitchen, the original kitchen was so small that you could fit 3 people in it if you tried. That's so much different now with the bigger kitchen. But then having a bigger kitchen brings up different difficulties. So we have the saying, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. So that's when you have more people in the kitchen, then you might have more views and opinions about the way things should be done. So in some ways, things were more difficult back then. In some ways, they're more difficult now. And the difficulties just change their form. But if it gets too comfortable, it's like Luangpur Cha would say, "Sabai di mai?" And when people answered "Sabai di," sometimes he would say, "Sabai di mai di." Sabai di mai di. So that means it's a bit too comfortable. So we might not develop in the practice so much if it's a bit too comfortable. So sometimes we push ourselves, but we push ourselves within our limits. Something that Luangpa Liam would teach quite a bit when the times I got to live at Wat Nong Pah Pong. He would teach about that humans are actually very, very adaptable, and it's totally amazing the difficulties and the circumstances that human beings can adapt to. But we tend to not adapt unless we're forced to. And we might hear stories or read about stories of these old Tudong monks who had these experiences, like walking through the jungle and standing at the foot of a tree because it gets dark and they haven't found a place to camp, and then it starts raining and they just stand in the rain all night. They might have their glot umbrella over them, but it's raining so hard that they just can't stay dry, and they just have to stand in the rain all night. We think, I would die if that would be so horrible. But actually, I think anybody here could do that. But we're not going to be able to do it just by going and standing out in the rain all night. It only happens when we're actually in that circumstance and we can't do anything about it. And in 2014, I remember going on a short Tudong walk, a couple weeks north of Abhayagiri, but it was after the Vasa, and it happened to be really, really a lot of rain. So the first couple days there was sun and the weather was nice, and then about day 3, it started raining, and so we were walking in the rain, and we had some like ponchos. We didn't have umbrellas, but we had these like rain ponchos that doubled as our small tents. And there was one day where we walked for about 6 hours in the rain. It was quite cold, and a lot of our things got wet. And then for the next week, we had this experience of getting rained on. And there was one night where we were under our little tents in a little redwood grove, and both of us had to just sit up all night because it was raining. And the tents we had were so small that the water, and they were homemade, we had made them here, and they didn't have any bottoms on them. So, we would just be sitting on the ground on a little mat. And it was raining enough that the water was just kind of creeping in, and we're kind of each under our tents, just kind of huddled in the center of these tents. And throughout the night, hey, are you doing okay? Yeah, I'm okay. And then he'd be like, an hour later, how are you doing? How are you doing? Yeah, I'm all right. So we'd be talking to each other. Maybe from me to Ajahn Sudhiro, we had our tents set up in this redwood grove, and then finally and we're kind of going in and out of sleep, but kind of in a sitting up position. And then dawn came, and we were able to pack up our tents and start walking back toward the monastery. And then when we got back to the monastery, and I went back to my kuti, and it was so nice. It was so nice. And it was still raining. And I went into my kuti, and I had the heater on, and it was dry, and it was warm. And I remember it was, because it was still cold and it was still raining. So I was dry and warm in the kuti, and then I went out on the front deck, and I was watching the rain, and I was thinking, gosh, there's no way I could go out in that rain. Wait, I just did that a few days ago. I was literally out in that rain all night. and it was really uncomfortable, but it was fine. It was okay. It was bearable. So sometimes we don't know what we can do until we actually are in a situation where we're forced to do something. And that's great. That's great that we can recollect that. And when I was in that warm kuti, I couldn't even force myself to go out into that rain. But just 3 or 4 days before that, I was huddled under a little thin tent, getting wet and really cold and uncomfortable in a redwood grove in the rain, not really able to do anything about it. And it was totally okay. So that's not because I have any particular quality of toughness, but it's just being forced to be in that situation. And the mind has a way of letting go when it's in those types of situations. So I guess we do need a little bit of training, though, before we do that. We do need some training, or else we might, you don't want to panic or something when you're in a situation like that. But if you have some training in the practice, then the mind will go towards peace. The mind will take refuge in peace. The mind will go towards calming down the mind will go toward, okay, there's nothing I can do, I'm not going to worry about it. So that's what we're talking about when we're cultivating Khanti. The next line is Nibbanang Paramang Vadanti Buddha. The Buddhists say Nibbana is supreme. Nibbana is the highest happiness. So this is really also connected with that Khanti Parami. The Nibbana means to become cool. So that coolness of heart that we might experience a little bit of, you could call it a contact high that we might get if we're around these great Krupa Ajahns like Luang Cha or Luang Pa Liam, or any of the other great Ajahns that say Luang Prapasano. We have the candles, flowers, and incense for him that will sit there. Luang Prapasano is in England right now, but that's what draws us to the practice. So kind of that contact high from, we get that coolness of heart temporarily and think, wow, what if I could cultivate that for myself? That would be amazing. So recognizing that Nibbana is the highest happiness. There is an interesting sutta, which I'm unable to quote chapter and verse, unfortunately, but where the Buddha says, if one doesn't believe Nibbana is the highest happiness that there is, one cannot attain it. So that's straightening our views out. If we think, there's probably something in the world that's better than Nibbana. You know, if I get rich, or if I become famous, or whatever, there might be, or get the conditions just right, get everything just right, that might be better than Nibbana. But if we really reflect on things, then we see Nibbana is the highest happiness, the Dhamma, the letting go, the sense of no worries. Then once we're convinced that that's the highest happiness, then the mind can really go toward it. The mind can incline in that direction. Then the Buddha goes on to explain about various ways of being in our life, being kind, being humble, not being harsh with people, not harming, not insulting, not injuring. So this is Nahi papa jito paru pagati samano hoti parang vihetayanto. That's like one who hurts others, one who injures others can't be called a monk, can't be called a samana, can't be called a religious seeker. Anupawado, anupagato, patimokhe cha sangwaro. So that's restrained there's a sense of training, restrained according to training rules, training standards, precepts, whether it's the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, 10 or the 227 or more than that, then living according to a sense of guidelines, a sense of principles. In Thai we call this the laktam, that principle of Dhamma that we live by. Matan yuta chapata saming, that's the knowing the right measure in food or consumption. So knowing the right measure in things. Matan yuta, that's the knowing what's just right, knowing what's just enough. Like today the food was so good and there was so much food that I took too much. I put too much in my bowl. It was, the eyes were, that's what we say, the eyes were bigger than the stomach. So unfortunately I wasted a little bit of food today. I wasn't actually able to eat it all. So knowing the right measure is when we know, okay, I know I'm going to need just that much. And then the Buddha goes on to talk about just seeking seclusion and cultivating the higher mind. So seeking seclusion, the translation that we chanted tonight is retreating to a lonely place, which sounds a little bit sad, but it's seclusion, the cultivation of seclusion. When we really cultivate seclusion, we won't feel lonely. So I don't know about this translation of lonely place. We don't want to find a lonely place. The loneliness is a kind of sense of alienation. But seclusion, there's a sense of fullness, a sense of connection, actually. Sometimes we might feel more lonely in a large group of people than we feel when we're in seclusion. Sometimes we might feel when we're completely alone by ourselves, there's no loneliness at all. So loneliness is not dependent on whether we're around people or not around people, but it's seeking that sense of connection with oneself. And if we're able to have that connection with ourselves, connection with our own heart, with our own mind, then it's not going to be dependent on anybody else. It's not going to be dependent on any external situation. So it's just these basic things, just being kind, knowing the right measure with things, taking time for oneself, keeping precepts, patiently enduring adverse conditions when they arise, cultivating the good, relinquishing the bad, purifying the mind. These are what the Buddhas teach. Those are the principles that the Buddhas teach. And all of us can do this. It's really amazing that from the time of the Buddha down till now, say that there was a time when Tanajan Mun was young. There was a time when he was a layperson. There was a time when he ordained. And there was a time when he had to practice and endure. And then he realized the teachings and he was able to pass that on to his own students. And with Ajahn Chah, it's the same, able to pass it on to his own students. And then everybody keeps aging. The generations keep moving forward. Time keeps rolling on and on like a wheel. So now here we are. We're aging as well. So it's really up to us to keep these teachings alive, and they're kept alive through that sense of just being able to endure whatever arises, being able to be with whatever arises. So I think that's appropriate for the amount of time that we have this evening, and I'll leave it there for these reflections for this evening. So now we come to the actual circumambulation part of Māgha Pūjā, and I'll do a call and repeat announcement where I'll say a line and then everybody can repeat after me. And once we do that, then we'll light our candles and incense and carry these things and do our It's lightly raining, so we'll have to endure a little bit. But I think if we wear our sandals, wear our shoes, we should be fine. And should we light these first before we do the announcement? Yeah, okay, so maybe, yeah, we could light these first.
She the one who sponsored the flower today.
What's that?
She get that VIP.
So yeah, while these candles are being lit, then a little bit of explanation about what we'll be doing is after we do our call and repeat announcement, we can use those candles in the middle to light our candles. And there's a little dial on these things that you can move the candle up and kind of, hopefully it doesn't fall over too much. Oh, mine has an old candle in it that I need to remove first.
Yeah, just take it.
Here, I think I'll light this one and then I can stick this one onto it.
Or we can use
Or I can use Lumpur's. Yeah, that's a good idea.
He's not going to use it.
Lumpur's not here, so I can use his Ogat cup. Oh, yeah. Okay. So try to make sure your candle isn't too wobbly also. Might have to press it in a little bit more. And so we'll do the announcement, and then we'll light our candles, and then we will, after we light all the candles, I'll be turning the lights off, and we will be able to process out, and I'll lead in the circumambulation. We'll be circumambulating the green Buddha, and there's also a Lumpur Cha image there, so we'll be also circumambulating Lumpur Cha. We'll start by bowing 3 times. And then we can pick up our candles, flowers, and incense. We'll chant the Namo Tassa first. Hannamayang Buddhassa Bhagavato Pupapaganamakarangaro Mase Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Today being the full moon of February, it is the Māgha Pūjā, the day when the Tathagata, the completely enlightened Buddha, taught the Ovada Paṭimokkha to the assembled Savaka Sangha at noon on that full moon day in February. These 1,250 bhikkhus, whose hearts were completely pure, had gathered together without prior arrangement at the Lord Buddha's residence of Veluwanarama. The Lord Buddha made this the occasion to teach the 4 verses of the Ovada Paṭimokkha, which elucidates the practice of purity to that unique assembly of wise beings. Now we have all come together to recollect and reflect on the occasion of Māgha Pūjā and on our revered teacher, the Buddha, who attained complete liberation long ago. We send forth our respect and gratitude to him and those 1,250 arahants by offering these candles, incense and flowers to the sacred shrine of the Lord Buddha. Although he passed into Nibbana long ago, the Buddha's guiding influence is still with us today. May our offerings be received and accepted for our long-lasting welfare, and for the happiness of all future generations. Sadhu. Okay, so we can help each other light the candles in any way that we can, and our incense as well. And also, after the as we circumambulate, then normally the first circumambulation we can be mentally reciting Bhutto, Bhutto as we're circumambulating, and then the second round Dhammo, Dhammo, and the third Sankho, Sankho is a way to hold the meditation object during the circumambulation. And then also at the end we can place our candles and incense at the green Buddha image shrine. But if we could all bring the flowers back in here, so the flowers will be offered to the shrine here at the very end.
There you go.
And once you have one lit, you can help your friends light them.
They're too short. You need those lighter. Yeah. I think a bit too short, yeah. Okay, you just hold it up. Like that? Yeah, good.
You can also take the candle out.
That's already off.
Sorry.
ให้ดอกไม้แล้วนอกไปจุดธูปเลยข้างนอก
ปกติก็ไม่จุดธูป
ไม่งั้นถ้าจุด
จุดธูปหลวงตาจุดธูปเราก็ต้องจุด
And also you can put the incense in the flowers. It's a good way to hold it.
Yes. I'm going to put in the flower like this.
Okay, it's like that. Anybody need that? Nope, looks like we're all ready.
lay people, feel free to approach the shrine. Approach the shrine with flowers.
That is my good idea.
We'll end with the verses of sharing and aspiration. It's on page 33 of Chanting Book 1. Oh, and anybody who hasn't offered flowers to the shrine yet is welcome to approach and offer flowers to the shrine. Page 33, the verses of sharing and aspiration in English.
Let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration through the goodness that arises from my practice. May my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless through the goodness that arises from my practice. And through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled.
So we'll continue our meditation vigil this evening, tea at midnight, chanting at 3, and then for anybody who's heading back, safe travels. And I think it's warmed up a little bit, it seems, so I don't think there will be any icy roads. So you should have safe travels back to your respective locations. And then anybody who's who's staying here who'd like to join in with the vigil, then that's an option as well. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
อยาก